So I want to ask you, what condition is it that we find one another in that we need to be getting out of our own flesh to reach out? Be willing to be uncomfortable. And so I want to look at Luke 10, just a short little story. The Good Samaritan. How many of you have heard this story? Okay? They even have a Good Samaritan law. It says if you stop by to help someone, and because you're not so good at what you do, you cause them more harm than good, they can't sue you. It's a Good Samaritan law. So if someone's broke down on the side of the road, and you try to help them, but in doing so, you cause harm, they can't sue you, because you were trying to help. And so we're going to look at a story of a man who needed some help, and how wonderfully the church responded. Well, actually, not really. They failed. Who would like to read that for us? Okay, Sue.
Just then a religion scholar stood up with a question to test Jesus. Teacher, what do I need to do to get eternal life? He answered, what's written in God's law? How do you interpret it? He said, that you love the Lord your God with all your passion and prayer and muscle and intelligence, and that you love your neighbor as well as you do yourself. Good answer, said Jesus. Do it, and you'll live. Looking for a loophole, he asked, and just how would you define neighbor? Jesus answered by telling a story. There was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down the same road, but when he saw him, he angled across the other side. Then a Levite, religious man, showed up. He also avoided the injured man. A Samaritan traveling the road came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him onto his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take good care of him. If it costs any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on the way back. What do you think? Which of the 3 became a neighbor to the man attacked by robbers? The one who treated him kindly? The religion scholar responded. Jesus said, go and do the same.
So that's in, I think, the New Living. And if we were to put that in today's terms, it would be some poor guy was walking down the road, heading to a flea market to sell all his stuff, because that's where the money's at. And so he had all his money on him, and some robbers jumped out. And there was a nice church pastor that was going by and saw the man on the side of the road. And so he made sure he avoided the man, because after all, he didn't have time, and he didn't want to get his hands dirty. Maybe he was in his Italian suit. And then another man came by. He was an evangelist. He didn't stop either, because he was too busy preaching the gospel. He had another street corner to go yell at people. And then the third man came by. Maybe he was a drug dealer. Maybe he was just a basic thug. And he stopped. And he put him in his car. He didn't care that he got blood on his seats. And he took him and cared for him and paid the bill. And I think that Jesus had criticized church leaders more than anyone in the Bible. He talks about church leaders and hypocrisy more than he talks about sin. Because people who don't know any better don't know any better, but people who do choose not to. And so he's telling us, who is your neighbor? Who is our neighbor? Anyone who's broken. Anyone who is reaching out. Anyone who's self-destructing because of emptiness. And he calls us to help them. But what if they don't look like me? What if they don't smell as good as the guys over here who bathed in cologne this morning? Now you can smell it, can't you? well, what if he's just not a good person? And he deserves what he's in. The movie Philadelphia was on as I was getting ready to go to bed, and Bob was watching it, and it was the clip about, they have the protesters outside the courthouse. The movie was Tom Hanks playing a man who was dying of AIDS and was kicked out of this prestigious law firm he was a lawyer at because he had AIDS. And there was a sign that said, AIDS is the cure for homosexuality. And you know, I think sometimes we get into our little pride bubbles and we say, well, they deserve what they got. He deserves that. You know that homeless person on the side of the road? They probably deserve to be homeless. And if I give them money, they're just going to buy booze anyway. So what's that any of your matter? I was trying to pull up some pictures for today, and I Googled on some things, and there was a guy had his cardboard sign that says, "I'm not lying, I need a beer." I'd probably be tempted to go buy him one. But so many of us justify not helping people because we think they're getting what they deserve. Would you be honest and say you've done that? You withheld help from somebody because they deserve it? Yeah. How many of us deserve the help we got? We didn't. We don't deserve what we get. God gave it to us freely. That's called grace. And what we deserve, He withholds from us. That's called mercy. And so the mercy and grace that we extend to one another is stopped up when we first think we deserve all the good we have, and somehow that we've paid for all the wrong and we don't deserve punishment. When we somehow think we're worthy of forgiveness, but the person next to us ought to burn in hell. And so it brings us to a kind of a difficult realization is, who triggers you? Who makes you get to the point where you think you're better than they are? Because at least you didn't do what they did. Because Jesus didn't stop from going around any of those people. The very woman caught in the act of adultery was thrown before him. Well, I'm thinking if you're in the act of adultery, you're not looking so good. Not so proper. And I think they make that point quite clearly. Thrown before the most holy of holies. And what did he do? Did he say, oh, I can't look at you until you put the right clothes on? Until you take your hat off or shave your face? I can't look at you. You smoke. You have piercings in your face. Or, you don't look like me. Or maybe I can't look at you because you don't have piercings in your face. Goody two-shoes. You know, we can reverse this whole thing, come as you are, and we can actually scorn the person who comes in here in a tie. Shame on us. It's the same hypocrisy. But when this woman who was obviously broken, abused, what makes a person in her situation go from man to man? Do you think she grew up in a nice home?
No.
She was abused. She was violated. She was worthless. Is she the one that perpetrates all that? No. But the very men that allowed that to happen said, stone her, that's the law. And he says, well then, you who is without sin, you can cast the first stone. Because he was obedient to the law of the land. You can cast the first stone then if you have no sin. Well, they dropped all their rocks. Now he could have thrown a stone because he was holy. And he says, where are your accusers? He said, they're not here. And he says, well then, neither do I accuse you. He says, but go and sin no more. That's mercy and grace. He was not too good for that woman in her shame. And he wasn't too good for us when he knelt down at the rock in Gethsemane. If he really had a rock, I won't get a rock. That's what the picture shows.